Okay, we're live. So, thanks for joining us for Freeplay's online festival. I'm Dan Golding, Freeplay director, and I'm going to chair this really amazing panel, one of the highlights of the festival. I think, for me at least, definitely one of the highlights of the festival. So, first of all, thanks to our online festival sponsors, Prize Attack, and just a little bit of info about Freeplay. If you're watching from Melbourne in Australia, we're running all week here, and we've still got tickets to our symposium on Sunday, the April the 19th available. So, go to our website at freeplay.net.au for more info. So today, this panel is called Games Around the World, where we have a great cross-section of guests from game events, festivals, and conferences around the world. So, joining us, we've got Celia Pearce from Indiecade in the US. We've got, we are expecting James Mielke, but he's not yet with us. He may join mid-panel. We've also got Sarah Schoemann and Mariam Asad from the US from different games. And we've got Thorsten Wiedemann, I hope I said that right, from Amaze in Germany. And finally, we've got Andrea Hasselager, which I probably didn't say that right. I'm sorry, Andrea.
That's okay.
And she's from Lyst Summit, which is runs in Scandinavia, but actually she's in Portugal at the moment, as I just found out. So I thought we'd begin just by going around and hearing about each event. You know, how long's it been running? What do you do at it? What can you expect as someone who attends one of these events? I thought perhaps Celia, we might start with you. Possible?
I'm keeping my mic muted so that the birds singing in the background do not distract people. So I'm actually here in Boston. Indiecade is located in Los Angeles. We have our flagship festival every year. We started in 2008. It's typically in October. We relocated in 2009 to Culver City, which is a little small city within the city of Los Angeles. In addition to that, we have showcase events and mini festivals. So we have an event that we do in New York every February. God knows why we go to New York in February, called Indiecade East, which is a wonderful event because it has its own completely self-contained community of people that help organize it, including actually Mariam and Sarah are part of the group of people that are heavily involved in it. And also we do a showcase at E3 every year. And I wanted to mention that because we've actually been bringing many international projects to E3 since we started doing their showcase. There's an airplane. Back in, I think it was 2007 was our first year at E3, and we sort of taken the place of the international pavilion that used to be part of E3. So it becomes a way for us to serve as a kind of a distribution outlet or an exposure mechanism for games that might not otherwise be seen. So for instance, last year we showed Bounden at E3, which nobody at E3 would have really had the opportunity to be exposed to. So we're really, although we're based in the US, we really try to be an international festival. This year we're working on expanding our participation from Latin America, which is an area that we feel like we haven't seen as many games from as we'd like to. But we get games from Europe and Korea and Australia and all over the world, really. So we're constantly trying to kind of widen our embrace to both a more diverse and more international constituency.
Great, cool. Thorsten?
Yeah, I'm the festival and founder, festival director and the founder of the Amaze Festival. I started in 2008. It was just a bar event. I brought media artists and interactive designers and game developers together, but in a way I had not so much ideas about games, really, because it was not so much my background. My background is more film and music, and but I was running around 2006 and 2007 at a lot of game events, more the industry events as well. 2006, 2007 I was at GDC for the first time. I made interviews for an online platform And I had no idea about it, but I was just finding out there is a cool independent scene around and an arty scene, and it was something what interests me a lot because this is something where the good ideas are coming from, and I was very much working with all the net artists together. I was part of kind of a lab in Berlin, and it was a reboot, and it was very, very kind of a new thing in Berlin as well, bringing people together from different kind of fields, interdisciplinary fields. And the Transmediale was working together with the Transmediale and the Club Transmediale. And then I started 2008 this kind of a maze, but it was just a name at the beginning, and had this idea of celebrating games, art, and music. That was the core idea. Then in 2010, I made another festival. What was connected to a music festival, was the Club Transmediale, and we were focusing a lot on music and music games, and we had a nice exhibition just about the history of music games, and that was kind of the breakthrough, because I saw that there was a lot of interest from around the world what Amaze is doing, and also in Germany and Europe, and also South Africa. So that was in a way the first connection as well to South Africa, because I'm doing the Amaze Festival since 2012, as it is right now, in Berlin and in Johannesburg. And the Berlin Festival is always in April, and the Johannesburg Festival is always in September. So my idea is always to bring up that games are not just seen as a product, that games are seen as an art form, that games are more than just talking about business. I mean, it's important, of course, but it's and people should earn money and everything, but I like to have a discussion how we can make and raise a better quality in video games, and also to bring personal stories in there and all the things, and also to give a place for people who are more or less experimenting. And I mean, this is very interesting for me, and also for the Amaze Festival, that experimentations are the thing what also brings the whole media more, how do you say, it helps the media to grow, you know, and it is kind of getting to a cultural value, because when you see film or when you see literature, I mean, people discussing the things completely different, and also people from the mainstream understand and see, okay, these are the people who are doing this, and people are following these people because they have interesting motivations to do their art in their medium. And this is something what I definitely want to help with Amaze, to bring up this visibility, that people as well, journalists for the feuilleton, are also discussing what we are doing and what the people are doing. And I mean, the scene is very young, and especially in South Africa or in Africa, it's super young, and it's kind of, Amaze is helping to, I think Amaze is supporting, not helping, Amaze is supporting the people who are creating games and creating playful media, to have this platform and to have the exchange and have the visibility what they need.
Great. Andrea?
Yes, I am together with my work partner Patrick Jernfeldt. We started the Lyst Summit, and we are a very young festival. We started last year, was our first summit, and the format for our festival is that we have a one-day symposium, and then we have a 48-hour game jam. And the reason why we started Lyst is that our festival is for romance, love, and sex in games. And the reason we started Lyst is that we really felt a need for having more different themes within games. We really wanted to expand the boundaries for what the medium can do. I guess, like, sometimes, like, I mean, not so much anymore, but at one point I really had this feeling that games were just like at the same stage as like movies, when they just created like Western movies with like cowboys, and I really had this feeling like, I mean, come on, there's so much like this art form can do. So that's kind of like what we wanted to do with our festival. And now, so we're doing it, last year we were in Copenhagen, and then since we are from Denmark and we have a lot of collaboration across the Scandinavian borders and a lot of cultural similarities, we're like, why don't we make like sort of a Nordic front? Maybe we can really be like the front runners within romance, love, and sex in games. So we got some partner organizations in Norway and Finland and Sweden. So this summer we are going to do it in Finland, and then we go to Norway, and then finally Sweden. And then, so those are like the first 4 years, and then we'll end up with a big exhibition, like in a museum in an art space in Copenhagen for the games. So very much in the spirit of Thorsten's, what he's doing with Amaze, like we also very much try to blend the boundaries of sort of like the art world and the games world, and sort of try to get more games into galleries and art exhibitions, because, I mean, that's sort of our personal, I guess, motivation. And I mean, also to show that games has so many, like, there are games that can be art, but then there are also games that can be more Hollywood games, like more commercial. I mean, I feel there's a need for like different groupings in games. So far, like, our festival last year was really like a huge success. Of course, we're really nervous because it was the first time we're doing something like this. And also because it's really sort of like, with everything that's been going on with Gamergate and stuff, it's quite of like really difficult topics to approach. And so we are very careful with like which speakers we wanted to invite, and having a set of rules, of course, of how we talk to each other and all that. But it really went quite excellent, and yeah, you can see some of the experiments of the games that came out of it on our website.
Great, cool. And finally to Sarah and Mariam.
Different Games is actually in its 3rd year now. We started organizing the first event that was in 2013 in 2012, and Different Games is specifically focused on diversity and inclusivity in games. So as you can see, it's been a big year for discussing issues like gatekeeping, harassment, the representation of gender and different identities in games. But yeah, we started organizing in 2012 when Anita Sarkeesian's first Kickstarter campaign was being launched, and she was dealing with the harassment campaign around that. And when the One Reason Why hashtag first took off. So these are issues that obviously have been going on for many decades in games, but the last few years, like there's been a real increase in kind of discussion, and we wanted to sort of create a physical space, a physical sort of coming together of people to be able to talk about those things and talk about them in a safe space, like a space that would be ideally as sensitive to people's positions in the discussion as it could be. So we actually have an interdisciplinary space that's both a conference component, that's a day-long event with panels and workshops, and discussion groups, and then also an arcade that this year had how many games?
I think we had over 42 games in our arcade, and these were all submitted from across the country and abroad, I guess. We put out an open call this year, and we had just an incredible, overwhelming response, and the game spanned from we had Oculus games, and we had sort of tactile games, and we had Twine games, and games made through game jams, and really high fidelity games. So we just had a whole gamut covering a bunch of different sort of political and identity issues and really personal stories. Thorsten was mentioning those, and it's it's a real privilege to be part of a conference where these voices are boosted and people get to interact with each other without any fear of backlash.
Yeah, I think one of the exciting things about Different Games for me also is the that we probably like a lot of conferences, folks that are represented here, we're sort of really spanning a lot of different spaces. We're definitely not pitched towards the industry in any way, but we have folks that might identify as artists. We have folks that are academics that are involved. The event actually takes place at NYU, and we're generously sponsored by a couple amazing private sponsors, but also NYU's Game Center and the Department of Integrated Digital Media at NYU Poly. So it takes place in Brooklyn. But the great thing is that it's actually grown into, after being organized by just a couple people the first year, we now have an organizing team of about 15, 16 people from a bunch of different institutions around the U.S. and primarily folks that are in New York and then also in Atlanta, Georgia, at Georgia Tech, where Mariam and I are right now. So we've managed to have this kind of big interdisciplinary team of people that get together and work on this project together, and it's really nice to see, you know, an event come out of, you know, sort of a huge collaboration with a lot of different minds coming together.
Great. Well, I think as well, I'll probably, I guess, weirdly enough, I'm both the chair of this panel and sort of also holding the flag for this sort of Australian festival side of things. So Freeplay, especially for any of your audiences who are tuning into this panel who might not know what Freeplay is, Freeplay, this is our 10th festival, so it's been around, I suppose, for an indie game festival for a while now. And it's, I mean, it's usually been focused on a conference weekend, I suppose. But we've also frequently held, you know, run-up events and playful events and, you know, sort of those sorts of things in the lead-up. This year, it's a huge change for us in many ways. We're doing 10 days, and as part of that is this online festival. And I suppose distance has been a big thing for Australian games culture for you know, since the start. But for Freeplay as well, I mean, I think one of the first panels, if not the very first panel when it began, was sort of like, here's what you missed if you didn't go to GDC sort of thing. So sort of, you know, getting people to almost make links with the outside world has been something that has been running through Freeplay right from the start, and so it's kind of nice to have this panel actually, and again strengthen those ties with the rest of the globe in that sense. So the next thing that I was going to ask is, I guess, what kind of challenges do you have with your events? What's always the tricky part? Is it, you know, getting people together? Is it communicating what your event is about? I might go straight back over to Sarah and Mariam actually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Mariam has thoughts about this. I would say because we work with so many people and we try as much as possible, or we sort of as an organization are trying to move into more of a collective model, more of a cooperative model where we make decisions by consensus, and, you know, it's, you know, that makes things more complicated, right? Like the more you try to share responsibilities across a group of people, some of whom are tenured academics at institutions and some of whom are, you know, folks that are, you know, young professionals in the tech scene or indie game devs or undergraduates, you know, who are volunteering on a project, the more you try to share, you know, responsibility like that, the more, you know, that's actually a lot of work, creating structures of accountability, creating, you know, sort of fair ways to distribute labor and responsibility that, you know, give everybody a sense of empowerment and a sense of sort of stake in what you're doing, while also, you know, making sure that you're not overwhelming people with responsibilities that are like out of their depth.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a very similar answer. I was going to say labor is probably our biggest issue. We are both PhD students, so we have copious amounts of free time to organize a conference. As is, I would say, a lot of our organizing committee are academics also, most of whom are PhD students. All of us do this for free. Like, this is uncompensated work, and so it's all labor of love that we're putting into this and trying to, you know, like, figure out logistics and figure out security, and none of us really know how to do that.
Right.
Like, we don't, trying to, like, figure out an inclusivity statement while also balancing 2 classes and, you know, all this kind of stuff, which I think is actually just a testament to how valued this conference is, both across the organizing committee and to the people who attend it, knowing that it's just sort of a bunch of scrappy young adults putting some hours in, happen over a weekend.
Yeah, can I?
So
Yeah, I'd love to amplify that and just talk a little bit about how Indiecade has really become increasingly horizontal since we started. So the first year we were in this space, and this also has to do with the issue of scaling, which I think Sarah and Mariam are at the beginning of the arc, and we're kind of at this much higher, much progressed level of that arc, but scaling is really important for these events. So the first Indiecade was held in one room. There were actually two rooms. There was an exhibit space and a conference room. We had 80 submissions, and there were a total of 30 people at the event, and everything that happened at the event was hands-on, organized by me, Sam, and Stephanie. Stephanie is our CEO, and Sam is our director. We literally did everything. We plugged in every computer. There were 2 volunteers who came up with us from LA, and a couple of kids from DigiPen that came and helped us on site. There was a gallery director who also helped us, but it was a very small group. It was just very grassroots and very, like I said, hands-on. When we went to LA, our first year was very similar. We were pretty much doing everything. We had some students, volunteers who came on to help with the, on-site stuff. And what ended up happening was at the end of first Indiecade in LA in 2009, people approached us and wanted to get involved. And this was amazing because we didn't ask for anybody to help us, but everybody wanted to help us. So John Sharp approached us that year and asked if he could help to organize the conference. He got other people involved, and he's basically been the conference co-chair ever since. And it's just been like this snowball thing where every year more and more people want to come and be part of organizing Indiecade, such that now, my experience going the last few years has been hilarious because, in the first couple of years, I was literally pitching tents in the parking lot, like physically putting tents up. And now I just walk around and enjoy the fact that we have a community of people. I actually, and then the Indiecade East event, it's just, Stephanie's very hands-on with it, but it kind of runs on its own steam. And so a couple of years ago, I adopted this slogan that I use all the time, which is, it takes a village to raise a festival. And I feel like the strength of our events is, it usually starts with the charisma of a few individuals. So in this case, Thorsten or Sarah, who really start the ball rolling, but then I think success is really built on how much passion you can develop amongst a community, so that if I were to just drop off the edge of the earth tomorrow, I know that Indiecade would be robust and run on its own, and that just makes me really happy because I feel like that's the sign of success to me. Last year we got almost 1,000 submissions. I think we run over 100 games at the festival now. So I just feel like if a community latches on to your event and takes it over as their own, that is really the greatest accomplishment you can have as a festival or as one of these kind of events that we're all, about creating.
Just from my side, from the side from Maze, it started completely grassroots, and I did most of the stuff from 2008 till 2011. And then I found some people, mostly students, they were working with me together. And now the core team is about 10 people now. So it's people who are taking care of the program editing, people who are taking care of the exhibition, people who are taking care of the workshops and the conference and the award show, and also taking the submissions, taking care of the ticketing. It's a lot of delegation right now, and it's also that it's becoming more that I'm more an administrator than a creative director, especially when it's coming to the end of the festival. This is something what I don't like so much, because the position of just taking care of budget is also something what is a kind of a nightmare. So I'm more the creative part of the festival. And it's hopefully I can find a project manager who is taking care of my job, or a producer, because this is something what I need, especially when I like to expand, and especially when I want to do more in Africa, and I'm talking now to Moscow and gonna go to Moscow maybe and gonna do something like there, and then want to bring Amaze around the world, because I mean, I think Amaze is a little bit special because it's so much punk rock as well. It has music involved. There is a lot of fun, and of course, I mean, we have serious talks and we have a great program and everything. And but I just see the people really like it. They like it to not go to events where they always have to be this kind of corporate things. You know, this is something like this is something what I think Amaze makes unique. It's a party. It's a 3 days party anywhere in the world. It's 3 days. We are celebrating games and we are celebrating good content. And this is something what is probably the success of Amaze, I guess. And that's why people from the States and all over the world are also coming to Amaze. And it started really, really small. That we had whatever 50 people at the festival, 2012, and plus the people I invited to talk. So we were 100 people, and now it's kind of that we are 700 people each day, and this is in about 4 years. It's pretty cool. So in Africa, it's kind of, I'm trying to, the idea is like the Indiecade to also be a public festival, you know, that people can come, that kids can come and having fun, and really kind of enjoying something what is beyond the mainstream, because we are knowing everything, we are knowing what is happening because we are part of the community, but most of the people outside have no clue what is going on. And this is something we always have to see in front of our eyes, that we are in a way special, we have special information, and most of the people outside they don't have. So it's much more important also to get them into the whole thing, and also to spread the word very, very much internationally, and going very much internationally, because this is also something what is kind of a pain in the ass for me. I'm always calling my festival, it's an international festival, but it's completely not international. It's, I mean, it's the Western perspective, that's it, but it's not international. So, I mean, there's so much culture and stuff missing, and this is something what I definitely want to change in the next years.
I'm sorry, add one thing also about the labor question, because Mariam and Sarah mentioned academia, and I think it's really important to understand the ecosystem and your ecosystem that you inhabit. So with Indiecade, for instance, we have the funding issue. The funding issue is always an issue for all of us, I think, and so we have had to form relationships with the big corporations, which a few, I've heard a few critiques of that, but it's like, we wouldn't be able to do Indiecade without people like Sony. I mean, it just would be impossible. And at the same time, Sony has added its embrace to indie games over the last few years, so there's a really nice synergy there. But also, I think it's really important to acknowledge the role of academia. That, at Indiecade, almost all of the people that volunteer in Indiecade, not almost all, but a large percentage are very much tied to academia. They're either students or they're people whose like my salary is paid by a university so that I can work on Indiecade. And this is something that really gets downplayed in the media. Like when you talk to indie developers, they don't mention that they came out of an academic program or that their program paid for their festival submissions, which is very common. Or, at USC, the kids get points to submit to Indiecade. So I feel like we need to really acknowledge that, because without the support of academia, I know our festival and definitely different games would be impossible. So even the facilities, different games takes place at a university, where if you guys had to rent space like we do, it would be almost impossible for you to function. So I think we really need to mention that, because it gets glossed over a lot, and it's very important.
Yeah, it's funny, like, can I say something?
No, go.
It's because Celia's talking about sponsoring, and that was like a really big question for us at Lyst, because like, who did we really want to get to sponsor Lyst, if any sponsors were like interested, because we're so like these topics we're having are very like specific, so already was quite like fragile, and we didn't want any sponsors that could give people the wrong impression of what we were doing. So, but we've been lucky, because we applied for funding, and we got public funding to run our festival. So in that sense, I guess we're kind of independent from sponsoring. But I guess like question you asked was like, what's the most difficult to tackle in your festival? And I guess for Lyst, it's very much the topics. Like people like advised us against doing the festival at all. They're like, no, don't go into these topics. I mean, you're going to get like, the media is going to kill you. You know, it's going to be like sort of like sex festival about games or something. You know, it could really go the wrong way. So that was like a big concern. It went really well, but also like that was like the big concern for us, I guess.
Yeah, that's during all the discussion about academia, I had to resist walking into the other room to get my PhD thesis and hold it in front of the webcam. Yeah, it is funny. There is that link, I think, the world over. And the same with budgets. I think my long-term plan is to never look at a budget again, or to get into the point where I never have to look at a budget again. So, yes. My next question that I was going to ask is, what about
I'm going to respond to a couple of things real quickly. First of all, Andrea, I love the theme of your event, and we actually, Indiecade East, that was our exhibition theme also. We had love and rejection was our theme. And also, when I worked on the XYZ exhibit in Atlanta with John Sharp, we had this really big problem there because we were in Georgia. So we ended up, we really wanted to have, we had a number of games about gender identity, actually, and they were in the main exhibit, and we were very staunch. We wanted them there all the time. But we ended up having an evening that was like the, you know, R-rated evening of erotic games, and that's where we showed things like Luxuria Superbia, for instance, Lapis, and other games that were more direct. We showed Darkroom Sex Game. But I think it's a challenge when you're dealing with certain audiences. So like the Love and Reduction exhibit worked well in the museum setting at Indiecade East, but probably wouldn't have gone over very well in Indiecade West, which is more of a family, public-oriented event. So it is a delicate balance of trying to integrate controversial themes that might not necessarily be, you know, considered mainstream or accessible to everyone.
I mean, for the Amaze Festival, for instance, we do the most stuff in nightclubs. So this is something because for me, the most important thing is as well to kind of getting this whole whatever hipster crowd, you know, who are running around in Berlin. And also because they are the creative minds, they're doing all this kind of creative industry stuff and whatever, working for magazines, you know, people from the Wise magazine and all this stuff, Crank magazine and Traffic and Fashion and everything is, they're all coming as well to the festival. And this is as well the goal, you know, to bring these people together. And it was at the beginning was very, very difficult because nobody really understood what is Amaze, what games, boring. But now they're just kind of getting into it, and they're really kind of, yeah, they're waiting every year, just, oh yeah, Amaze is coming up, and this is cool to see it's becoming a kind of an interesting and interesting thing for the whole society, and especially as well for people who are thinking, yeah, the old media, this is something, you know, you have to go to film, you have to go to whatever, to art exhibitions, you have to go to something what is kind of, you know, this good things, you know, this kind of things where I can identify myself. And I think I just see that over the last years, it's just coming up that more and more people are getting really interested, even when they have no clue about games, they're coming to Amaze, and this is something what I always was looking for, and I'm happy that it's going to happen next week, so in 1.5 weeks, and to see all the people together playing games.
I was going to ask about curation, actually. How do you find new voices? Maybe Andrea, we'll start with you.
Yes, for us that was funny because like last year we did it and we were like, so we don't want just people from inside the games world, like academia or like professionals, like we're like, can we, like, we wanted to inspire people like the game jammers with something completely different. So actually at our festival, like at the symposium day and during the game jam, we had our lady came and gave massage to people, and then we're also very much considering if we should have a lecture on tantra, and that sort of went out again, but it was like, but so we really wanted to try to I guess also make it a bit more physical in a way, because, you know, like when you start game jamming, it's all in the head. but could we get like people more like into their bodies, like before they would, and maybe they would come up with different ideas, you know, like. So that's one of our like big discussions always. So we always try to have somebody from like outside the industry. Like I think this year, oh no, now I'm like telling something probably I shouldn't, but maybe I can still. Like I think this year we're going to have somebody moderating our panel who's actually he's an indie porn gay actor and has a lot of opinions on games, and so it's just like something like that, you know, just to break it up a bit.
Yeah, I think so I have a very sort of strategic approach to curation, and it's kind of a twofold approach. So one is that when I first came to Indiecade, if you would go to an indie game festival in the States, there was a particular type of game that was represented, and it was very narrow. So for instance, I remember when we did our first E3, they had a serious games booth that was next to us, and everything in that booth was also indie, but you'd never see serious games in an indie game festival ever at that point. I had curated an art games exhibit in 2003 called Alt Control, which was actually why Stephanie asked me to be part of Indiecade, because she wanted art games. And what I found is that if you broaden your definition of games and you broaden the communities that are creating interactive media, and even get over this whole fight about whether or not something is even a game. Like, this is a big political, to me, a gatekeeping function. Like, oh, that's not a game, so it can't be in a game festival. We kind of eradicated all of that with Indiecade. And the second thing is curating the people. So one of the things we were talking about at Indiecade East this year is we had really nice mix in terms of gender and age and role, but the one thing we were lacking was color. So I just walked around the very last day and I said, great job, everyone. Now we need to colorize. And like, they were already finding people to be on the committees next year. So part of my position is that if you put diverse people in decision-making roles, and I don't just mean by race, I mean by discipline, by experience, by perspective, you don't even have to worry about diverse content because it will take care of itself. So we had the first female African-American speaker ever at a conference last year. And that's because we had a curatorial team, a conference team that was acutely conscious of these issues. So if you get the right people in place, a lot of those issues will solve themselves.
Sarah and Mariam, perhaps?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about trying to curate an interdisciplinary event is that you have to be really conscious of how you're sort of phrasing your request for proposals. We kind of have moved back and forth between models of sort of having a full-on just call for proposals and also sort of hand curating certain parts of the festival where we reach out to people because we do kind of need to sort of have a little bit of, we do need to kind of put a little extra effort into making sure that we do see a kind of wide representation of different sorts of voices. So this means that, like, if you say submit, a presentation, you might get only indie game developers submitting their games, and they might not think of themselves as people that are appropriate to speak on a panel, or they might not be used to thinking about how to pitch their game as something they might want to talk about the way that somebody who does a lot of research projects and presents at conferences because they're an academic would, or the way that somebody who is maybe a journalist who is used to participating in events, as a panel speaker would. So we tried to sort of make that clear, and we kind of went back and forth a lot amongst our, various organizers as we were pitching or putting together our call for proposals to, like, think about how we could sort of do that outreach work and make it clear that, like, if you're an academic, maybe you might want to do a workshop instead of just being on a panel. And if you are somebody submitting a game, maybe you want to think about whether or not there's something interesting, that went on in the development process that you want to talk about. Because not everybody sort of is used to kind of thinking of their work in the same sort of presentation style. So we did kind of a lot of thinking about that. The other thing is that we have, for the last 2 years, we've offered travel funding to anyone that we've accepted or invited to speak at the event. So, and also this year to many of our arcade presenters, or at least a few of them who took us up on the offer. So we try to make the event accessible in terms of, making sure that we see a lot of different voices represented, and that those voices are not necessarily people who, are faculty and have funding from their department that they can travel with, or that work for, a successful game company or work in the industry and have sort of a boss who can pay for their ticket. We're working with a lot of indie developers, a lot of marginalized folks from, different communities around the world that might be doing this through Patreon, might be supporting themselves through a variety of different sort of mechanisms that don't necessarily put them in a position to sort of be high flying and travel to the next festival. So we try to really do that sort of outreach to make it possible for people to be there and be part of the conversation that that otherwise wouldn't be able to. And I think that's really paid off in terms of getting some sort of some very unique content at the event, because it's something that people hear. Oh, you can, they hear from a friend. Oh, you got your plane ticket paid for last year. It makes people who might not otherwise submit, consider that this is an event that might be for them. Mm-hmm. So I think that gets us a lot of kind of interesting and new submissions. Yeah.
And similarly, I would say curation for our arcade has sort of followed a sort of vague, ephemeral framework. I think for a lot of festivals, you see things like must be a complete game, must be polished, must be, etc. And so when we put out our call for arcade games and arcade submissions, we try to include not only a variety in representation and subject matter and content, but also, platform and also stage of development. So we have a lot of early games or beta games, and this provides the developers and the designers an opportunity to actually engage with people who are trying out their game. And so this is something, returning to the question of curation, this is something that we incorporate consciously also, is how are we picking, who are we picking? It's not just a complete sort of polished 100% arcade game, but also I guess trying to work in opportunities for our submitters to benefit as well as our participants.
Mm-hmm. And consider aspects of the values of the games that aren't necessarily just their production values, as I think is probably true for everybody here, but with a mind too that we might be looking at a Twine game from somebody who has sort of limited tech skills, but what's going on in the kind of narrative content of that game, or what is this game doing that we haven't seen before, and that would be really valuable for the conversation at different games.
I'd like to add to that a couple things. One is the role of jurying versus curating. So we actually started out with only juried games, and we decided to start adding curation because games would come through that were really interesting that might not have gone, the jury might have ranked highly with the jury or had some really good, interesting things about them but weren't really polished, like you said. So we actually use the curation as an opportunity to use our own discretion at bringing, and some of the best games that we've had have actually come through curation, and some of those later will end up in the juried festival, interestingly enough. As far as the funding issue goes, I think it's really interesting to look at the range of national representation here, because obviously in Europe and somewhat in Australia you have public funding, which you have to realize just doesn't exist in America. Getting grants is really hard, and actually these guys have done really well at getting grants, the Different Games group, because they have the diversity angle, which gives them a hook that some people have funding resources for. We have no grants, and there aren't any grants for what we do. However, we are able to provide some travel subsidies and some housing assistance to developers purely through the largesse of individuals. So some of our more successful indie constituents give us personal checks every year, and many of these are off the radar. Nobody even knows about this. People who have had considerable success in the indie scene will give us a check for $1,000 or $5,000 to help support developers to come to Indiecade. So there is also this kind of internal, it's an almost benefactor culture, like it used to exist in the arts in the 20th century, where you would have, people who were successful helping people come up. And I think that that's a really nice culture that we should continue to cultivate on a personal basis, where an individual is sponsoring another developer to come to Indiecade. It's a really nice part of how we support developers.
We don't have any grants.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
but you did the first year actually, right? Sarah, didn't you guys have an NEA grant the first year?
Well, we have an NEA. We had an NEA fellowship program last year, which we haven't really talked publicly about this yet, but we're actually in a dispute with the NEA right now because they are in the process of revoking our grant because of the sexual content of the games. So that's something that we're still talking about with them. We're in a mediation process, but if that if that doesn't go maybe in an awesome way, I'm sure you'll be hearing more about it because it's a pretty big deal in the U.S. The role that the government funding has played in the arts. Historically, there have been a lot of sort of controversial instances of kind of very clear cases of censorship, and we were saddened to receive a notice that our funding was being taken away based on some of the games that were made by very prominent game makers. We have an amazing collection of 5 fellows that are all prominent game creators, and we're just sort of shocked to hear that the NEA was disappointed with the content, since it also seemed very in keeping with what we would expect from these game designers. So yeah, we're actually at a complicated moment with that, but that's kind of a small. We sort of kept that walled off from the conference, but the conference is primarily funded by private funding that the Georgia Tech students go after from tech companies like MailChimp and Keen.io this year, and then sort of equally it's equally sort of divided into 3 between private funding and then NYU Game Center and NYU Polytech, and they provide the space to us, which of course is a huge value to us. But yeah, we did do this fellowship program, which was to specifically sort of in a similar model to like NYU Game Center's No Quarter exhibition, where we sort of elected, we put together a collection of 5 amazing artists: Colleen Macklin, Anna Anthropy, Robert Yang, Maddie Bryce, and Kaho Abe, and they created games specifically commissioned for the festival through this NEA grant. So they've all been compensated, and everybody's doing fine. But now we're sort of at the end of that process, and we're in this kind of weird potential dispute that I'm sure we'll have more information about soon.
Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to clarify. We don't.
Yeah.
Grants are not a thing.
It would be so beautiful if we did have government grants, though. Wouldn't that be a beautiful world if it was easy and accessible to get money for the arts in the U.S.? That'd be
Yeah, but let's just add, it's like, yeah, even though we have public funding, it's like it's still like such a hard process to get it. So it is sort of like a dream world because there is a chance, but still it's like the application writing and only like so few people get selected. So I mean, it's still sort of uphill, but nonetheless, yes, sure, we do have a chance at least.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean that Amaze is a limited, so and Amaze is a company, and I'm the only person in the company, so it's not a collective or something like that. So for each project what I have or what I run, game jams or whatever, exhibitions or festivals like in Berlin and in Johannesburg, I have always a dedicated team at the location. I get funding this all over the years. I got funding from the city in Berlin, or not even the city. It was the Medium Board Berlin-Brandenburg. They're also funding movies, and they're giving good money, what is very, very well. But still, I mean, it's not enough money because I have to get my own locations. I have to. I'm so weird and pay all the invitees. I'm gonna pay the flight and the food and the accommodation. So everybody who is coming to Berlin is kind of he or she will be everything is going to be sorted. Of course, I have this kind of private funding, Unity and MailChimp and all the others, and it's fucking awesome just to have them involved, because I mean this is something what makes even for the industry more important as well, how important the independent scene is for them as well. And especially, I mean, in Johannesburg, it's another festival. I'm connected to the university, the Wits University, and we are working since 2012 together, and they are really good in doing everything what is facilitation, and also this year is gonna get money for the first time from the city of Johannesburg, especially because I'm gonna do something in the townships. So it's gonna be Amaze pop-ups in the townships in Soweto and in Alexander, especially because when we are talking about diversity, even when I'm doing the festival in Johannesburg, to find black or whatever more colorful people on stage or doing games, it's not easy. It's not easy because, I mean, the people have no access so much to technology or to internet, so it's not so easy, even when you're in Africa, to find people who are really, really doing games. But they're starting, and I mean, it's something what is very, very awesome what the Wits University is doing over the whole year, because they have this curriculum since 2012. And there are people from Soweto coming, and they also get scholarships, so they can get into the university and learn game design. They're studying game design, doing board games and everything. And this is something what is kind of the Amaze is helping this whole development, because we need to have an annual thing going on where the people meet and the people can greet and they can exchange. And this is something what is very important, and it's great that the city sees something like that, this value, and gives money and funding for the Amaze Festival and the Fakuges Festival. What is the Switch on Electricity Festival? This just came up. It's the Umbrella Festival over where a lot of other stuff is happening during this month in September. In case of curation, I mean, we have a submission for the Amaze Award. It started just with one award in 2012, and it was just one winner. He got 5,000 euro, and that's it. So, and we had always an international jury. Now we have 5 awards, and we have one guy who is taking care of all the submissions. We have a selection committee. Now we're going to show 20 games this year, and plus all the hand-picked games from people who are speaking at the Amaze Festival, and especially when we're talking about the conference and the workshops, these are people we are following. I mean, it's and also recommendations, you know, something like that. Oh yeah, you have to have him because he's talking about that, and he's very, very good in this. And we also, I mean, it's hard to kind of getting this kind of diversity in, and also this kind of international thing. But I think we are coming to this point to really being this festival what we want to be. And Lorenzo Piglia is my program editor, and he's very, very doing a lot of stuff as well in Berlin. And he's helping a lot, also researching stuff and finding stuff and good people. And it's a lot of work. And I think this is the work of a curator to have a good show, and also a show what is not just for the professionals, also for people who are just interested in the thing. And because this is something what I think this is the most important thing, we have to think about outside our world. You know, this is something how we can connect other people, and this is my approach, always to be interdisciplinary, and it's always the thing. Amaze has to be interdisciplinary, and this is also the first time. It's just because when I'm talking about curation and also funding, the Polish Institute in Berlin and the Institut Français, they give me also some money. We get into a partnership. They just approached me in October. Let's do something together. And I said, yeah, let's do something together. It's cool. And I made a budget plan. Okay, let's bring whatever. Let's make an open lab. So we invite 6 people, 2 people from Berlin, and 2 people from Poland and 2 people from France, and they do something weird together. The topic was the brain. So so the people doing something cool during this 4 months. No, 4 weeks. It was only 4 weeks. 4 weeks artist in residence program. But this is something what I really want to keep going more and more and more. This artist in residence thing is something where you really can put media artists, filmmaker, visual artist, game designer, just coders and something like that together, and they're creating something completely new, completely off topic, of course, not off topic of the topic, but I mean off topic of what this games means. And this is something what is very interesting, and also what is brings everything into a new dimension, you know, another dimension. It's not always this game, it's kind of breaking out.
Okay, so I'm conscious of the fact that we are running low on time. I'm just keeping an eye on the Twitter feed as well in case there are any good questions that come through there. So if you're watching along and you've got a question, now is the time to ask it. But the one thing that I wanted to ask is sort of my final question, and really this is two questions. It really is two questions, but I'm making it one now. What's the most rewarding thing about doing this? And secondly, what's your advice to someone who wants to start their own games event?
Oh, can I go first? I'll promise I'll be fast, so you can all get to speak. I think the reward for me personally was really that so many people came up to us after we finished last year and said that it was the best game jam and symposium they ever attended, because there was such an intimate feeling. We were just 30 people for the game jam, and that was really the feeling we wanted to create, to work with these topics, that you felt really comfortable around the people being there and felt comfortable enough to open up and maybe also talk about some personal experiences to include in your prototypes. So for me personally, that was the best thing. And then an advice to somebody like starting up, it's just like if you have that drive, you really feel like there's something out there that's missing that you would like to do, then I mean just get in touch with people that are already doing it and ask for some advice and just do it, it's possible.
Yeah, for me, I think a couple things are the whole "it takes a village to raise a festival" thing. Just to me, the fact that people spend all this time helping us and being part of our community is amazing to me. And also, I feel really strongly that my evil plan to take over the world is working, so that makes me really happy because I go out and I see games on PlayStation that were at Indiecade, and I see more diverse game makers out there in the world. I love seeing, the Copenhagen Game Collective being on Nintendo, Wii, and Xbox. I mean, PlayStation just makes me super happy. I've been with now a whole generation of indie developers from their starting point to huge success in many cases and controversy. To me, the big issue now is we gotta tackle this diversity issue and deal with the whole Gamergate stuff. Fortunately, there's some money. I just talked to Intel last week, and you're on their radar, different games. Woo! So I think there's the benefit of all of that is that there's going to finally be something done by the people who have the power to do something about it.
Sarah and Mariam?
I've sort of been struggling since you asked that question because it's hard to pick a single rewarding experience. I mean, just like the entire weekend, I'd have to go into a corner and try not to cry because there's people like hugging and, like exchanging ideas, and new games are getting played for the first time, and yeah.
Yeah, I think people have responded really positively to the inclusivity statement we made originally in 2013, and Mariam was part of re-editing it this year and creating a new statement. But one of the things that people talk about is how amazing it is to be together in person, and how great the feeling is at the space, and I'm sure you guys experience this at your events as well, but it's just a lot of these communities are really activated online. We all know about each other's festivals and the things that each other do through sort of our connections on Twitter and on social media, but getting people to be in the same space for the first time, tell somebody that they've been playing their games for years and they mean so much to them. Getting to actually physically be together is really important, I think, and important to community building, important to being a creative community. So that part of it is really rewarding, and seeing everybody just kind of get to enjoy each other for a weekend is really rewarding.
It's kind of like coming home every year.
Thorsten?
Yeah, I can just add this because this was something what really made me so happy. When we were listening somehow to the last band or act at the Amaze Festival last year, somebody just came to me and said, it feels like home. And this is something what makes me really cry always when I'm thinking about that, so, about this this kind of sentence. It's really, yeah, because it feels like home, and people are coming and they're saying, okay, hey, if I want to do a festival, I want to do it like you, because I mean this has everything what a festival has to have, enjoyment and also kind of serious stuff, meeting people, networking, exchanging, and this is something what is very rewarding. And as an advice, I think it's do what you like and ask people, ask and connect. That's what the most important things are.
Well, I don't have. I think I should wait for my best part until my festival ends at the end of this week.
Panel? It's this panel, right?
Oh, really? I thought so.
Can I add one thing to that last question, because it's my favorite thing anyone ever said to me at Indiecade was I was talking to them about, you know, my concern about we're getting bigger and bigger, but we still have our ethos, and Ramsey El Nasser, who these guys know because he's based in New York, said to me, every time I come to Indiecade, I'm filled with love. And I said, that's the right answer, and if that ever changes, be sure and let us know, because that's exactly what we want to create with our festival.
My advice, though, would be to get really, really good at spreadsheets. So, we do have a whole heap of questions all of a sudden. We are like technically out of time at this point. I think I don't know. Look, I think maybe that's a natural note to end on at this point. And you've all been really, really generous with your time. So thank you so much. It's been a really, really great thing to be able to bring all these, you know, people from different festivals all around the world onto the one panel. Thank you so much to Celia, Sarah, Mariam, Thorsten, and Andrea. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope.
Thank you for having us, Dan. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you
very much. And have a great festival. It's still on,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Good luck, Thurston.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Dan. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.